Video disclaimer. This is just a video essay discussing the 7 deadly sins in modern society. There's not going to be any fancy editing. I am not a Christian, nor am I trying to push any religious ideology or any ideology. However, I as an atheist believe that things could be learned from these ideas that could inspire us to be better people. This is not an attempt to assert the moral high ground. I am guilty of many of these things myself, and I'll personally talk about them. I ask though that you don't let my hypocrisy detract from what I'm going to say. I'd also like to point out that although the issues stemming from the sins have been inevitable as our continued existence as a society, I know that not everything will be sunshine and rainbows no matter how hard we try to fight them. It doesn't mean we should dismiss them. Each individual issue I'll mention may not be an issue everywhere. Some places are worse than others, but no place is perfect and every place has their fair share of problems. All of our houses get nasty and shit, and then Earth is all our home, so we should try to make it a better place. The 7 deadly sins are as old as humanity itself. They are our animalistic instincts for self-preservation, protecting ourselves, feeding ourselves, reproducing to make more of ourselves. They are human. Yet we go too far with them and they lead us to ruin. First on this list is lust. Let there be a massive trigger warning for this section. When I say the word mommy or daddy, what first comes to mind? If I asked you years ago, you'd probably say your mother or your father. But now you're probably thinking of a sexually dominant man or woman. And that's pretty funny. It might make you giggle a little bit. Sex between two consenting adults is a healthy and natural process. But like all things straightforward like that, they just get corrupted beyond comprehension, as I'm going to discuss later. After all, we know prostitution is known as the oldest profession. And in the modern age, hypersexuality is absolutely out of control. It does not stop at anyone, even people who cannot consent. I'm sure we all know what lust is. We call it, we can call it by its other names, horniness, yada yada. It's this intense desire for sexual gratification, oftentimes without respecting yourself or others. And when talking about lust, we're gonna have to talk about sex, but more specifically, the dynamics between the two sexes, which is a whole doozy. Parasocial lust and objectification. 43 million is how much OnlyFans creator Sophie Rain made in 2024. And that doesn't even mention how much OnlyFans or the porn industry as a whole has made. OnlyFans, Instagram, Twitch, Jerkmate, etc. kind of embody the phrase of don't hate the player, hate the game. And I don't say that to justify their existence. Don't get me wrong, they're 100% a net negative on society, otherwise I would not be mentioning them in this video. They've just mastered the art of parasocial lust, which we see as a prevalent problem in today's age. Wait, there's something I have to call out specifically about Instagram. Fun fact, those OnlyFans promotions you get are only if you're a guy. If you have your account set to male, you get those OnlyFans promotions because girls have claimed to not get those OnlyFans promotions. So people blame the women on there saying that they're selling their bodies to pornography and that they're a piece of meat and all fatherless issues, but it's something people willingly buy into. They fail to acknowledge the other side of the equation. The men who are paying for the illusion of intimacy, resulting in this cause and effect feedback loop where more women are creating OnlyFans profiles in return. And now we have more and more men subscribing to said profiles. It's a whole simping epidemic, we've dubbed it. And I know women simp too. There's Japanese host clubs where women paid for the illusion of companionship too. We also have people simping for boy band group members who never know who their fans are. But it's mostly men who make up this whole artificial intimacy economy and who are financially draining themselves. If there wasn't a demand for this type of content, we wouldn't be seeing promotions everywhere. A great deal of people engaged in this type of behavior are older married men who would rather spend money to receive nudes from an OnlyFans model or send messages to an OnlyFans model because they find that OnlyFans model more attractive than their wife. Look at any OnlyFans promotion and you'll notice that a bunch of the comments come from older men, and you can look on their profiles and such and see their kids or their wives. The other demographic for this issue are the younger men who have never interacted with a woman and desperately seek that companionship. What does this all amount to? Well, if the older married men and their wives catching them engaging in this type of behavior, as was shown with the Ashley Madison scandal, if you don't know what that is, that's going to lead to divorces and problems. But what about the men whose wives don't catch them? that's still going to lead them to divorces and problems because they feel detached from their genuine spouse. Then you have younger men who have never had a non-transactional relationship with a woman starting to think that the Ryan Gosling and Drive or Blade Runner, or worse with stalking, predatory, incel type behaviors, which have entire communities arising out of this shared frustration. Instead of men connecting over sports and video games, they're connecting over the hatred of the opposite gender, which makes them glorify figures like Elliot Rodgers, and is why historically young single men have been prone to violence. I'll revisit the topic of envy under inceldom, but let it be known that when people start to view themselves as useless and when they have nothing to lose, that is a very dangerous mentality. Need it be said how this distorted view of women affects both their safety and their dignity. When you can just pay for intimacy, they're reduced to objects of sexual gratification, and yes, I know Venus figurines have existed since the Paleolithic era. We are not currently living in the Paleolithic era. But what I'm talking about is the lack of respect. There's women with this condition I don't know how to pronounce, and there's guys in the comments, anytime a woman with this condition gets a breast reduction, they complain that she's downgraded, or she lost her most beautiful feature when her back was literally about to be destroyed. Some women lean into this type of stuff. They become pick-me's or Dubai porta potties, and for those who are uninitiated, Dubai porta potties are women who are paid or given clout. They flex that influencer lifestyle. You see all their pictures and stuff. They're flown out to Dubai or Saudi. They do things such as turning the 14-year-old sons of the people who paid them into men, if you know what that means. As their name entails, they're literally paid to be shit on and perform other gross degrading sex acts. If anybody's watched Two Girls, One Cup, they eat chocolate pudding, if you catch my drift. They are quite literally used as human toilets. Other women see themselves as undesirable and would rather have random strangers thirst upon them to feel validated. Whether that's going on dating apps, or that's going on Omegle and flashing their breast, or its successors as Omegle's gone. They'd go on there and just show their breasts. But it gets worse. I've seen this been used as a grooming tactic where minors are feeling insecure about their looks, and a predator, no matter how ugly that predator looks, they give them that validation they crave, and so they're willing to send anything to get that validation. This is all the result of lookism and treating attractiveness as currency. Hollywood, music, and social media are also part of the problem because they've painted women to be sexual deviants that are always down to fuck at a moment's notice. But fun fact, women are probably down to fuck with somebody who they trust and built a relationship with. The result of this is those meme Indian Facebook DMs, weird replies like bitch lasagna or I want to stick my ass in your asshole. People in more conservative societies, what they see on the big screen is what they think is an accurate portrayal of Western women or just women in any culture. If you have them all sexualized in your media, people seem to think that the women in this culture, oh, they're all horny and whores and shit. At least on the internet too, everybody's anonymous, so there's no repercussions for saying anything.
You guys keep asking me why the fuck I don't reply the chat, but every time I reply the chat, it's like all kind of weird ass questions like, do you shave your pussy? Do you like this? Do you that? Shut the fuck up, okay? Shut the fuck up with your horny ass fuck questions. Nobody give a fuck about answering all these questions, yo. I'm not your personal porn star.
But then it gets into more degenerate type of shit like essay threats and other horrible things. Yes, I know there's women who read smut, are into CNC, and how women have sent love letters to Ted Bundy of all people. Yeah, those people need help too. Imagine walking around being followed or catcalled, being treated like a piece of meat rather than a human being. They've also become the targets of incel frustration, not on the level of Elliot Rodgers. Well, I mean, yes, on the level of Elliot Rodgers, but we'll get to that later. But you do have women being punched in the face in New York, and you also do have women being aggressively bumped by the shoulder in Tokyo. I think that speaks for itself. If you're already raising a pitchfork because I haven't mentioned the harassment that men face, you're a part of the problem. Men face harassment too, and it is equally as terrible, but I will get to that later. Keyword equally. Oh no, he's one of those male feminist Kamala supporters. Right now, we're talking about women. They just make up a statistical majority of harassment victims. Those two issues are not mutually exclusive, and I will cover that later. But no, the widespread dehumanization of women in all different cultures is a dangerous precedent that has been set. And yes, both genders are responsible for the objectification. An alternative to parasocial lust and objectification. I know it's easier said than done, but I think we should provide better employment opportunities so OnlyFans and other type of things like that aren't the first things people turn to. I think both men and women should know their values as human beings. A lot of these women are just in a bad place financially, which has been a driver of prostitution throughout the ages, and is also the reason why those Dubai porta potties exist. They're mostly from low-income countries, and so they come to Dubai and whatnot, willing to do anything for just a bit of cash. I mean, why else do we see so much sex tourism where it's young Filipino girls with older Western men? It literally happens with men too. Just take a look at Gambia, where you have young men sleeping with old British grandmas just for a bit of cash. They're essentially selling their souls because once you do sex work, it's stuck with you. Mia Khalifa, no matter how much she tries, she can't scrub all her videos from the internet. Nor can anyone remove these unwanted sexual encounters from their memory. To women showing off their bodies for not for money but validation, they need to stop seeking validation from strangers. You're not anybody's personal porn star, and if you're not dangerously overweight or underweight, you're fine. And as for the men who are subscribed to OnlyFans and other services, they are deeply sexually frustrated. There's literally just a flood of OnlyFans promotions and other sexual stuff, which is getting more and more degenerate, some of which is literally OnlyFans models using pictures of them as children to promote their OnlyFans. Under these posters, guys spamming heart emojis and I want you baby like they're trapped in some kind of trance. I know I already said it before, but excluding those absolutely degenerate reels, if anybody's commenting under those reels, I think they're too far gone. But like other reels and all these promotions, I think they just need mental health. We should instead of shaming them, I think we should encourage them to go seek therapy. Many of these men are seen as too far gone. It can be friends, it can be family. They're just kind of left to rot. And I think people should start to show them that the world's not this lonely, lust is not everything, and that they can improve themselves. They see a woman they desire so badly that they end up pursuing this financially draining parasocial relationship. Do you think Sophie Rain or any other OF creator can recall the names of any of their fans? Couldn't even if she tried, because the OnlyFans creators usually have a management company talking for them. Imagine dumping your life savings for somebody who's not even going to speak to you. That's not even pathetic, that's just depressing. I think both men and women deserve better. We need to call out this bullshit more where it happens. Hookup culture. Hookups have become more normalized with less people bothering to commit to relationships. That includes people already in relationships. You can seduce somebody at a party, or you can go on a dating app and say, I'm only here for hookups because it's not hurting anybody, right? Excluding the STDs. It's marketed as empowerment from oppressive ideas such as love and marriage that doom people to a boring life to where they can't enjoy their youth. When it comes to promiscuity, I hear the same argument. Let them enjoy their sexual freedom. Again, they're not hurting anybody. Sure, between two adults it's legal, but since when did legality make anything immune to criticism? They say no strings attached because sleeping with a random person has no meaning. It is quintessentially masturbation, but instead of one person, it is two people chasing mindless gratification. Like the body count, for instance, is just a redundant statistic of how many times you try to fire off your dopamine receptors. That is not a flex, regardless of your gender. That just makes you a whore. People like to slut-shame women, saying they're sleeping around, they're ran through, they're freaky in the sheets, but men play an equal role in this. Yes, even if you're a dude, despite thinking that having a high body count makes you a master pussy slayer or some shit, it just makes you a man whore. You use each other's bodies to reach a climax, but the clarity afterward just reminds you that the fact that you're in a bed with a stranger whom you share no emotional attachment to. People have disconnected so far that they can have two people, one they use for sexual gratifications and one they use for emotional support. Why are we using people to just satisfy our short-term desires instead of looking for the other person for our lifelong two-man team? I don't think a lot of people disagree with this, more so they just aren't able to make a relationship work out. There wasn't any feelings involved, or we didn't fuck, are both arguments that people use to justify their infidelity. Cheating culture has become far too normalized too, because a lot of people lack that integrity and self-control to remain loyal to one person. Why settle down? Because short-term intimacy, quote unquote, satiates them and they can keep enjoying their youth. There are people out there who still want genuine relationships, but this emotional detachment is absolutely killing them. An alternative to hookup culture. There are people engaging in hookup culture that are actively tired of hookup culture. They need to realize that there's more to life than sleeping around. Finding somebody you love and forming a bond with them doesn't mean you're doomed to a boring life. They actually enhance your life. Go cook, go outside, go do fun things with your favorite person. In a real relationship, you're not losing your sexual freedom. You're building something that's fulfilling and actually enjoyable. If problems arise, stop being petty and trying to one-up your partner. Be mature. Talk things out, communicate, go to couples therapy. There's ways to make a relationship work. You don't have to just abandon relationships because one went bad. Communication keeps relationships strong, not screaming matches or the silent treatment. Sex is one part of life, but there's other joys in life, so save sex for somebody who actually matters to you. And when you find that person, remain faithful to them. Not because, oh, treat others the way you want to be treated, but just have mutual respect for each other. Your partner is not your op. And I'm speaking to you like it's not that hard because it really is not that hard. It does not require that much of effort. Sexual violence. One of the biggest things driving a wedge between men and women is the failure of parents to raise children with basic respect for others. Some parents just released their goblin sons onto the streets. Look at the 2016 Cologne, Germany attacks where over 1,200 women were assaulted. Women need to be called out too on this. They need to all learn how to keep their hands to themselves. It keeps happening in nightclubs and they think it's okay because it's mostly men assaulting women. That means it's perfectly okay for the opposite to happen. Double standards are bullshit. I said this about men earlier, but women too need to learn that not every guy is down to fuck just because we're the hornier gender. There shouldn't be any sympathy for those who violate others regardless of who it is. There are countries that refuse to teach sexual education, treating it as taboo, that make the problem worse. And no, I'm not saying bring drag queens around children to start twerking. I'm saying to teach them boundaries. And if you think I was targeting the backwards third world countries with that statement, no, it's a lot of wealthy people that engage in like sexual slavery and human trafficking. But to those developing nations, that is not an excuse. My mom immigrated from Kenya, yet she instilled in me the ability to have self-control and respect others. Like South Africa, I'm dying to hear the justification you have for the problems that you do. Suppressing conversations about sex doesn't protect anyone. It doesn't give you the moral high ground you think it does. It just breeds ignorance. The idea of consent is something that is being actively suppressed when it should be taught to people early on in life. Some people don't believe marital rape exists because this is my spouse and I can have my way with them. But consent is something that every human being is entitled to. To everyone, that should be common sense, not a hot take, but you would be surprised. Remember how I said it happens to men too? Well, it happened to me when I was a freshman in high school and some upper class girl slapped my ass while I was in line for an assembly. I didn't enjoy it and I didn't report it. I was too pissed at the time to even process what had happened. Other dudes had touched me too thinking it's a joke and I don't want to be the party pooper, so I don't speak up against it. You might ask why in the objectification section I was focusing on the predation of women when I'm an SA victim myself. Because I don't have the fear of going out on the streets at night or visiting a foreign country and becoming somebody's meat. I am infinitely less likely to suffer the same fate as Pipa Baka if I went on an international hitchhiking trip. Maybe somebody will come and steal my wallet or somebody will steal my belongings, but I'm less likely to end up buried in a ditch. The same could be said about rejecting somebody and ending up like Junko Furuta. I mean, thankfully Japanese law defined rape as rape in 2018 and Swedish law did too in 2023. It took them long enough, but then Swedish law allowed for this to happen. In both Germany and Korea, they have women-only parking spaces, much like the disabled parking spaces here in the States. But instead of them trying to get places faster due to mobility issues, it's them trying to get places faster due to the fear of being assaulted. There are women-only train carriages and buses in these countries for much of the same reason.
Guys, did you know in Japan they have women-only carriages? It's like Saudi Arabia in here. I am the women inspector checking there's only women on this carriage.
And guys like this are the reason why they exist. As you can see, not all elders are worth respecting. Parents just need to apply the same kind of treatment to their sons as their daughters. There's just been a preference for sons throughout history. We've shamed our daughters and we've spoiled our sons. Look no further than the one-child policy in China. Mao once exclaimed that women hold up half the sky. Yet if you look at rural China to this day, parents would rather pimp out their daughters to fund their son's education. Did she let you hit after you made this video? I'll admit my own personal bias because I grew up with just my 3 sisters and my mom, and I have female friends. And some scary shit has happened in the past. I know this might be anecdotal evidence, but Every single girl I've been with has been a victim at one point, and they're all from different geographic regions. And only one reported it to authorities, to which the perpetrator got a slap on the wrist. The idea that they affected somebody for the rest of their lives excites these types of people. Whoa, sorry bro. They're only apologetic when they're caught by a rightfully angry guy that they've also affected by assaulting somebody. Statistics don't lie, it's just a lot less dangerous for me as a dude. They apologize to the father, the brother, the boyfriend, etc. They don't treat the person who they victimized as a human being. They're seen as sitting ducks without a man to protect them. That's why we always point out in tragedies that women and children are the victims. How people treat World War II like it's this epic black and white good versus evil with the Allied and the Axis, and it's this great act of heroism, and the Allies fought against the evil Axis and such. You know how the Japanese are quite infamous for their treatment of civilians? There are crimes against women, the whole comfort women thing. The Allies, the clear good, were also responsible for quite a number of rapes during World War II. Do you know about the My Lai massacre that happened during the Vietnam War? Did you know there was an attempt to cover it up, and even when it was exposed, only one person was convicted and they were given a slap on the wrist? Whatever happened to Uncle Sam being the great protector of freedom and liberties across the world it claims to be? This is also a thing that takes place in the 21st century. America's stupid as fuck wars causing tragedies like this incident in Iraq to happen. It literally happens anywhere there's war. It's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now. And it's not a thing exclusive to wartime either. Look at the US servicemen in Okinawa on that base abusing Japanese girls. Look at the Central African Republic where UN peacekeepers, people who are supposed to be peaceful, keep the peace, are doing the exact opposite. I know I've been talking about America a lot, but again, every country is guilty of this, but I'm going to come down on America again because a lot of the assault that happens against their fellow soldiers in the military right now goes underreported. It is both genders remaining silent out of fear there will be retaliation. Look at the case of Lavana Lynn Johnson amongst other issues with the military and wonder why nobody wants to enlist. Aren't service members supposed to be people of strong discipline and self-control? Bad mental health is not an excuse because there is no excuse for this type of bullshit. SA is just something that sticks with you, that makes you feel nasty even if you take a shower. Men will see women being preyed upon and instantly remark that it happens to men too. Whatever happens to men or women, pointing fingers is not something we should do. Men's sexual assault and women's sexual assault are not separate issues. I pointed this out with my personal experiences, but both genders do not always report when it happens to them. If it affects everyone, shouldn't we work together to discourage this type of shit as a whole? Man or woman, you'll often hear, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you say something? Or they just outright don't believe you. In some egregious cases, I've heard about people refusing to touch their partners because their partners have been sexually assaulted and they feel disgusting touching somebody who's been assaulted. It also affects the most vulnerable, children. I mentioned grooming before, but it is out of control right now. I was chronically online throughout grade school, and most of the friends I've met online have fallen victim to grooming. The sexualization and assault of minors, especially in the digital age, is out of control. There is offenders driving across states multiple hundreds of miles to go meet up with victims. This leads us back to the start, where bad parenting creates not only perpetrators, but victims too. The parents need to monitor their children's online content. These people refuse to take any accountability for what happens to their sons or daughters. We should all take a unified stance against sexual assault. An alternative to sexual violence. First of all, end the gender war. This isn't a man versus woman issue. This is an issue between those who accept SA and those who refuse to tolerate it. We are all on the same side. Yes, statistically, in most SA cases, the perpetrator is a man and the victim is a woman. That is reality. This shouldn't divide us. Anybody who hates SA should be working together. There are women who treat all men like creeps because of a few predators, and as a result, fewer men want to stand up for women. Stop saying not all men, but always a man. That's an awful rebuttal to an already cringe statement. Not only does it deny the existence of female perpetrators, but it also alienates men who are not part of the problem and feel unfairly targeted. Stop making enemies out of innocent men who respect boundaries. We also need to stop the cover-ups. We are all tired of boys will be boys or she was just flirting. Stop the victim blaming too. Some people who find themselves in that situation don't know what to do in that situation and they're caught off guard. Stop being a bystander too. If you see something, say something. If somebody is getting a slap on the wrist after they've committed a horrible act, you need to start raising hell. You gotta show your judges and lawmakers that you're not happy with this. Otherwise, people committing horrible acts will keep getting slaps on the wrist or not even getting prosecuted at all. Start helping those who are afraid to speak out against their perpetrators out of fear of retaliation. At the same time, we need to start practicing innocent until proven guilty. Far too many people have had their lives ruined just based on accusations. We should remember Italian TikToker Inquisitor who took his life just based on somebody's accusations with no evidence. False accusations destroy the lives of innocent people and they make it harder for victims to be believed. Know that there's two sides to every story, and if you take things at face value blindly believing either side, you're part of the problem. You're not the righteous and morally upstanding one you think you are, dictating a case you know nothing about and harassing any of the parties involved. Men who get assaulted too, they should know that it happens to men too. They are not invisible and they should not brush it off. It doesn't make you weak to come forward about your assault. Speaking up is how you take back your dignity. And for men who say not all men, don't just say it. Prove it. If a woman is apprehensive, don't take it personally. We are the stronger gender, and abuse of that strength is terrifying. We also have the higher libido. Why else is there a 3-to-1 male to female gender ratio on dating apps? How did OnlyFans creator Bonnie Blue find 1,000 men to sleep with? There are men who grope women in large crowds, spike their drinks at parties, and jump on them as an individual or a group in the dead of the night. And to the cultures where these types of issues are blatantly ignored or even accepted, you are inferior. It has nothing to do with GDP and infrastructure. If that statement angers you, don't get defensive. Fix your problems. No society that puts half of its population in constant fear could call itself a strong one. Show her that it isn't all men. Be the reason she can trust again. Treat her as a human being worth respecting. And to the parents. Number 1, you should absolutely start monitoring your kids' online activities if you want to protect them. You also need to start teaching kids to respect others, otherwise you're complacent in their actions. You need to stop shifting blame to other people and start doing better for your children so they don't end up as victims or perpetrators. To anyone thinking predatory thoughts, they should go seek mental help before they act on their thoughts because that's when it's too late. I think we should actively start working towards creating a society where these types of behaviors are not tolerated so that everyone can be protected. That will be concluding part 1 of Lust. Part 2 will be coming later. It took me a very long time to make this video, so any love is appreciated.